Hey, this is Austin Collins, and I'm gonna do my history project on the history of the Skil Saw. Now, anyone who's been around any construction or any work sites or anything like that has probably seen one of these hanging on a sawhorse somewhere being used by somebody, and that's because these are probably the most common tools used at a job site nowadays. And I thought the history of them was kind of interesting, so I figured I'd do this. So it actually started in uh, in 1921 by a Frenchman named Edmond Michel in New Orleans, and he was a planter, and he actually did sugar cane. And one day he was out in the field watching his workers, and he noticed how hard they were having to work just to cut down these big stalks. So one day he actually got what was it, a malted milk mixer motor. That's a mouthful, but just a big motor, and he put it on a machete, and I'll show you what it looks like. There we go. So that right there was actually the very first Skil Saw. And then after that, he did this again, but he got a piece of wood, and he cut a U shape into it, and he put a circular blade in it, and he still used the same motor, and that actually got him quite a bit of recognition. And he actually partnered with a guy named Joseph W. Sullivan, and they actually started a business in Chicago called the Michel Electric Handsaw. Well, actually, that wasn't the name of the business, but that was the name of the patent that they had on it, and that was January 20th, 1924 is when they got that patent. And what's interesting, well, I'm going to scroll down here. Let's see. Okay, so this right here is actually what that looked like. It was actually their first aluminum model, and it was the first one that they actually manufactured. And what's funny is they only made 6 of them, and every one of these saws took about $1,000 just to produce, and that is just crazy, because in today's money that would be even more, but they're sold for $100 or so, on the shelf today. So that's just the production has increased so much. Now, what's funny is the name, or these are actually called Skil Saws a lot of the time, but I'm gonna go back over here. Yeah, a lot of people call them Skil Saws, but what they're actually called is a circular saw, and where they get the word Skil Saw from is there we go. That's actually the name of a brand, and that brand is the one that Michel and Sullivan started, and they got their name one night when they were talking about how hard it would be to use their saw, because in the 1920s when they first started making them, they didn't, you can see right here, you can change the angle of the cut, and you can't really see it, but this blade will actually lift up some, and it'll give you a more shallow cut when you need it too. So there's actually a lot of versatility to them, but when they started making them, it didn't do any of that stuff. And they were in the living room one night talking about how hard it would be to make like bevel cuts and stuff like that. And Sullivan's wife actually chimed in, and she said that it would probably take someone with a whole lot of skill to do stuff like that. and then that's actually how they got the name Skil Saw. And also, it's kind of interesting to note that the first one that they made. Let me see if I can find this picture again. Here we go. So this model right here is actually the very first kind that they started mass producing. It's actually called a worm drive saw, and that's because the motor you can see is here on the right, and there's actually something called a worm gear, and it's actually really, really good built saw, and that's actually the one that Sullivan and Michelle made. And this type right here, you can see here it's called a sidewinder saw, or a lot of people just call them a circular saw, and that started being produced by guys in they're in the same industry, but they were from other companies that wanted to get in on some money, because these were widely very, very popular, and they were getting sold a lot. So people wanted to emulate that, but they couldn't make that exact same thing, so they started making those. And that's actually the kind that I have, that I own, but I'd like to get one like this, a worm drive, because they're actually a lot better, especially if you're doing more any kind of heavy work. So anyways, this is the one that they were making, and you can see that it actually starts to evolve a little bit. That's a little bit more, a little bit more modern, and then that's looking a lot more like the one that I showed you earlier. That's in 1937, and I think that's actually all the pictures that they have here. So I'm gonna post another video and show you a little bit how to use it, and actually get into a little bit of other stuff, so it's gonna be kind of interesting.